Life before death. Strength before weakness. Journey before destination. I will seek freedom for those in bondage. The oaths of the Knights Radiant are more than just words. They're more than just platitudes. They're even more than the ideals. They're philosophies the Knights try to live by. Welcome back to CL 401, Advanced Cosmere Studies. In today's lecture, we'll be exploring the idea, backed by evidence from the novels, that these virtues are actually Cosmere-wide phenomena, as universal as fortune, or connection, or the cognitive realm itself, and not just an isolated aspect of surge binding. Class is in session. Everyone who has taken Intro to Radiance is aware that the Knights Radiant develop stronger Nihil bonds with their partner Spren by swearing a set of ideals. Each order's ideals center on a particular virtue the Spren consider paramount. Rather than go over the ideals themselves, I'm going to quickly distill each order down to its core virtue. If you disagree with how I've defined the order's core virtue, especially for the orders which we haven't seen quite as much screen time as the others, please respond in the comments below. The virtue of Windrunners is protection. For Skybreakers, it's the rule of law. Releasers focus on self-control. Edge dancers pursue compassion. Truth watchers revere knowledge. Lightweavers understand understanding. Else callers seek excellence. Will shapers lionize freedom. Stonewards believe in being reliable. And bondsmiths unite. At first glance, this seems to just be a quirk of surge binding. 10 random attributes chosen by a group of Spren, nothing more. Today we will explore the theory that there's a little bit more to it than that. Iron isn't just some random metal associated with the metallic arts of Scadrial. It has effects on Fabrials and even Lumaran aether spores. Just so, I plan to present evidence today that these virtues persist across the Cosmere and affect more than just the Knights. So, what other arcana has shown virtue to be important? Where is it that someone proving themselves through heroic deeds can grant them powerful investiture? Bonus points if you guessed it yourself, but for now, let's turn our attention to the Returned of Nalthis. The Hallandren believe that Returned were heroes who proved themselves by sacrificing their mortal lives and were blessed by the iridescent tones with the opportunity to return as gods. Brandon says the following in his annotations of Warbreaker. There is something sound to the Hallandren reasoning that you have to do something heroic in order to return. That's not true, but it is more sound a doctrine than Ciri thinks it is. It's a little vague. He's saying that the Hallandren philosophy isn't true, but it's also not completely wrong. I take that to mean that it's a little bit like how Scadrian scholars used to believe that ferrochemical chromium stored luck. That wasn't actually correct, but it was a flawed conclusion based on incomplete but accurate evidence. So what is the underlying mechanic? We don't have many data points, but here's what we do know. Lightsong died saving his niece when she was swept overboard in a storm, as described in chapter 57. Comseer died when the family next to her came down with an illness. She took care of the survivors, and they all pulled through, but she caught the disease and died of it. Blushweaver gave testimony against a group of criminals. It sent them to jail, but she was assassinated for her troubles. Seeing that, and without other context, it's not hard to think why the Hallandren would think it's as simple as, these people are heroes. Although, even then, their titles hint at the idea that they're more than just generically heroic. Lightsong the bold, Blushweaver the honest, Hopefinder the just, Brightvision the true, Stillmark the noble. There's also Kindwinds, who is also the honest, but let's put that in a cadmium bubble for now. We'll get back to it later. How does this all connect? What if I rephrase the description of these self-sacrificing acts? Lightsong protected someone who couldn't protect themselves. Comseer remembered the forgotten, and Blushweaver pursued justice. It seems that virtue is the key which allows Edgeley to offer someone the chance to return. At least in these examples, the same virtues that allow someone to bond to true Spren. Now, we only have these 3 examples, so we can't know how many virtues are important on Nalthis. Maybe it's the same 10 as Roshar, maybe it's 5, for the apparent number of Nalthis. Maybe there are more than 10, perhaps even 16? As far as heroism, while I'm calling them virtues, they aren't all necessarily heroic. On Roshar, we know from Malada the Dustbringer and Nail's entire couplet of Skybreakers that the ideals aren't about being objectively morally good, just striving for something. That's what I think Brandon meant in his word of Brandon. There is sound reasoning because it does mean someone gave their life for something, and it's going to tend to be selfless. But it isn't true that they're automatically heroic. Any of the virtues can be pursued by villains with malice of forethought. Remember that, kids. A lot of Knights Radiants do prove themselves through their personal, heroic acts, but never let anyone tell you that someone is automatically a hero just because they bonded a Spren. Quick side note, because students have had some confusion in previous classes. I'm not saying there can only be one returned per virtue, as in, no one can return from having protected someone as long as Lightsong exists. Remember what we put in that cadmium bubble before? There was Kindwinds the Honest, the same time there was Blushreaver the Honest. Nothing stopped two honest people from being returned. Just like hundreds of different people can bond honor spread at the same time and all be Windrunners, there's no hogging virtues. Any person who dies protecting another, I believe, has a chance to be returned by Edgeley, even if another returned is alive who showed the same virtue in death. Now, are there really only 10 virtues? Are the virtues of Roshar the complete set? I suspect not. I'm going to turn your attention now to one particular surge, Soul Casting. As everyone who's taken the Transformation Surge Summer Elective knows, there are 10 essences something can be turned into. But Cosmere-wide, are those all? Or is it that Honor's Arcana takes 10 from a larger group? Let's consider Lumar. It's home to 12 types of aether spores. The known ones are plants, air, sunlight, crystal, spikes, and midnight essence. Brandon has said that the crimson spores are made up of something like carapace and would map to flesh. As far as pairing essences with aethers, we've got plants, crystal, air, and flesh as clear connections. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the sunlight spores, which produce light and heat, can be connected to the essence of fire. That is too many to be a coincidence. There's some relationship between aether and essence. Yet, one aether is the midnight essence, which obviously isn't one of the 10 used on Roshar. And none of the unknown aether spores could be water, or else one drop of water in that sea would set off a chain reaction that would flood the planet in expressed aethers. So essence and aether spores are related, but they're a Venn diagram. Or, to put it another way, there's a larger set of more, maybe 16, elements, and Lumar and Roshar each use a distinct subset of them, which is all just to establish the precedent and an example of what I'm about to talk about. The theory I'm proposing is that Cosmere-wide there are 16 virtues, and that when Honor and Cultivation created their 10 higher Spren, each became an embodiment of one of them. And of course, on SanderTube, you can't suggest there's 16 of something without trying to match each one to a shard. That's actually what I think really sells this theory. I've seen people try to match elementic powers to the shards, or ferrochemical, or surges, or square the dawn shards and match those to shards, but I've never seen anything mapped to the intents of the shards as easily as the 10 virtues we know of. I'm going to start with a list of pairs I think are an absolute slam dunk. Protection? That has preservation written all over it. The Elsecaller virtue of excellence? Sounds like ambition to me, always striving to be better. We've heard over and over how autonomy wants freedom, so much that they themselves are several people, some of them with wildly conflicting priorities. And of course, the entire point of Honor is to bind things, so it makes sense that the undisputed leader of Honor's Arcana focus on unity, bringing people together instead of dividing them. There are 3 others I think are good fits, although maybe not as airtight as the others. Dominion has to be in favor of people obeying the law. You're not in control of people if they're not following your rules. I'm going to name Virtuosity as the shard of self-truths and understanding, even without the added feature that Lightweavers tend to be artists. As for the Compassion of Edge Dancers, the trickiest thing there is I can think of 4 different shards, which all seem like a good fit, so I can't think of how to narrow it down. I could see that as being an aspect of Mercy, or Charity might be related to Endowment, the ultimate giver. Devotion seems like a good match to an all-encompassing love, or providing people with what they need to flourish could even be seen as an aspect of Cultivation, which would tie in with them bonding Cultivation Spren. Then, the last 3 I think are the biggest stretch. In part, I think this is because we don't really get much of a direct view on either these shards or the orders. Like how until Honor was really explained to us, and exactly what it meant in his case, binding and unity wasn't the only possible interpretation. The shards which haven't gotten the spotlight, we can at best speculate on what their intent truly means. And I know that the ideals up to the 4th have been released for all the orders, but just reading those words on a page isn't the same as actually seeing Dalinar, or Shallan, or multiple Windrunners all take their paths through the ideals to try to understand what they really mean. So, for knowledge, I'm going to go with reason. The Stone Wards, I'm really not sure I understand, but they vibe check with Valor. And lastly, for self-mastery, I don't really see an exact match, but I could go with either Ruin or Invention. Ruin has a lot more to do with how the releasers are considered so destructive. Even the Hero of Ages commented that Ati knew how to build up one thing if he could use it to knock over two others, showing self-mastery even when the intent completely overtook Ati's base personality. Invention feels like it could potentially have to do with regulation and self-control, and is also a reference to how releasers would generally be engineers, who were as adept at building things up as they were destroying them. Here endeth the lesson. Your homework class is to tell me if you'd give the virtues of the Radiants different names, to match them to the shards yourself, and if you really want, come up with the 6 missing virtues to match whichever shards you haven't already paired. For extra credit, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel with all of your friends. Before next class session, I'll be going on a field trip to Dragonsteel Nexus, so your December class session will probably just be a review of that event. Consider it your school holidays. Class dismissed.